A European court has determined that a Muslim's right not to be offended takes priority over the majority's right to free speech. That's not an interpretation. They said that out loud. Here's the case. An Austrian woman was convicted of, quote, disparaging religion. She was fined more than $500. Her crime was suggesting that Muhammad's marriage to a 6-year-old constituted a form of pedophilia. She claimed her comments were protected by the freedom of speech because she is a European, and traditionally they would have been, but things have changed now. The European Court of Human Rights disagrees with her. They affirmed her conviction. They said that they needed to balance her, quote, right to freedom of expression with the right of others to have their
How about the right of little kids to grow up first before they get
married?
married?
Brendan O'Neill is editor of Spiked Online and a columnist for Reason Magazine, and he joins us tonight. Brendan, thanks for coming on. Just as a factual matter,
is it any wonder we had to save their ass in 2 world wars?
Those are the facts of the case. It's pretty shocking. In 2009, this woman, whose name is not being given out in public, she gave a seminar in Austria in which she said that Muhammad behaved like a paedophile, and she was charged with inciting religious hatred. And she appealed to the European Court of Human Rights, believing that a Court of Human Rights might actually defend her rights. But the European Court of Human Rights has decreed that the court was right to punish her for making these comments. And furthermore, the European Court of Human Rights establishes precedent across Europe. So we now have effectively been warned, all Europeans, that you are forbidden from making this comment about Muhammad.
So in other words, a standard that has long prevailed in the Islamic world, which is that you can be punished for criticizing Muhammad, is now the law in Europe.
Exactly right, and I think this is pretty terrifying, because what we are witnessing in Europe is the return of blasphemy law by the back door. You know, people fought long and hard in many European countries for the right to question religion, to mock gods, to make fun of prophets. This is a long, hard fought for liberty. It's now being overturned by these new forms of blasphemy law, which really are rehabilitating quite medieval laws which tell us that there are certain things about religious gods and prophets that we are not allowed to say. I think it is a brazen and terrifying attack on freedom of speech.
Yes, and one specific religion. I mean, I assume you're still free to
become a Taoist or just continue to...
It's Islam. So, but let me ask you this. The guardians of the First Amendment in any society, of course, are journalists. I mean, that's their role in a society. But my sense is the European press has not reacted like their house is burning down to this. They haven't raised a hue and cry over it, or have I missed that?
They haven't, not yet. I'm optimistic that something might happen, because this is a pretty extreme case. But the problem we face in Europe, of course, is that Islam is offered the kind of protections that no other religion enjoys. We have the term Islamophobia, which is used against anyone who simply raises criticisms of the Quran or the hijab or any other aspect of Islamic practices or Islamic behavior. There's a real culture of conformism and censorship around the issue of Islam in particular, which means that unfortunately many journalists probably will not take to task this court ruling in the way that they should. I think what we have to recognize is that freedom of speech, by its very definition, includes the freedom to offend. And what the court has done it has said that people's religious feelings trump the freedom of speech. I think that's a really dangerous road to go down, because nobody's feelings should trump the right of anyone else to say what they believe.
Of course. But and this is a much longer conversation, which maybe you come back and we can have, but it's not simply a failure to defend speech, it's also kind of continent-wide self-hatred.
Yeah.
What people are saying is the culture, our culture, should bow down before another culture, minority culture from another part of the world. I mean, a healthy society would not take this position, right? A society that hates itself would.
That's absolutely right. I think what we are doing is we are demolishing one of the key principles of modern Europe. In the wake of the Enlightenment and the Renaissance, Europe propelled itself forward and started to believe in freedom and choice and the right to express yourself. We are now backtracking on those great historic gains, and we are allowing a new form of censorship to come through. I also think it's a very dangerous ruling.